Presented by chargebackgurus.com.
Don't let clean fraud scrub away your revenue. Getting away with fraud isn't always easy. As hard as fraudsters try to find newer and sneakier ways to steal payment credentials and deceive merchants, the smartest minds in the payment industry are always finding ways to stop them. Sometimes, the only way to get around state-of-the-art fraud protection is to make everything appear as legitimate and above board as possible, by avoiding all of the usual signs and indicators. Fraud is a dirty business, and some of the most dangerous fraudsters are the ones who make it look clean. What can merchants do to protect themselves from so-called clean fraud? Clean fraud can come in many forms. It's defined by its ability to evade detection by normal anti-fraud tools and methods, which can be accomplished in a variety of ways. What makes clean fraud so dangerous for merchants is that it's so difficult to prevent. You usually won't know you've been victimized by clean fraud until after the cardholder realizes it and demands a chargeback. Merchants can't fight legitimate true fraud chargebacks, so at that point, you're out of the revenue plus the cost of chargeback fees, and there's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't necessarily take highly advanced technological tools to pull off clean fraud, but you're more likely to see it from sophisticated, professional fraudsters, not the average cybercriminal. There's no one weird trick to preventing clean fraud, but the more you understand how it works, the better equipped you'll be at recognizing it and implementing productive countermeasures. What is clean fraud? There are several distinct varieties of clean fraud. Not every instance of these types of fraud will be clean fraud, but when clean fraud is unmasked, it usually fits into one of these three categories. Friendly fraud, also known as chargeback fraud or fraud by false claim. Identity theft, especially the variant known as synthetic identity theft, and account takeover fraud. Every merchant who deals with chargebacks should be well acquainted with friendly fraud. This refers to customers who make a valid purchase, then later make false or misleading claims to dispute the transaction with their issuing bank in order to obtain a chargeback. While some customers may engage in friendly fraud out of ignorance or confusion, many do it intentionally as a form of cyber shoplifting. Because friendly fraud always starts out with legitimate transactions, there's nothing anti-fraud tools can do to detect or prevent it. Identity theft, another common form of cybercrime, is also an effective cover for clean fraud. With the right personal data, a fraudster can apply for a credit card under some hapless victim's name and make all sorts of purchases that they would never pay back. While most cardholders will notice credit card fraud when they review their monthly bank statement, identity theft can go undetected for a long time. Many victims won't even realize they've had their identity stolen until they apply for a loan and see the damage done to their credit rating. Even more dangerous is synthetic identity theft, which uses elements of real personal data mixed with fabricated details to create an identity based on a non-existent person. While banks have gotten better about spotting synthetic identities, they're very hard to detect once they've been successfully created. Lastly, clean fraud often comes in the packaging of account takeover fraud. When a fraudster succeeds in hacking into a customer account on a merchant website, they can make all sorts of purchases with the victim's stored payment credentials without the merchant noticing anything amiss. While inconsistent shipping addresses can give the game away, digital purchases are harder to track, and clever fraudsters can even spoof geolocation and IP addresses to avoid detection. How can merchants prevent clean fraud? Regular fraud often gives itself away with noticeable inconsistencies and missing credentials. Anti-fraud tools like AVS and CVV can easily catch out stolen cards that don't have the right billing address, or CVV code, for example, and fraud detection algorithms can often infer fraud from incongruous shipping addresses and geolocation. With clean fraud, the customer identity, addresses, and card data will always appear perfectly correct and unremarkable, betraying no telltale clues that would raise any suspicions. In the case of friendly fraud, there's simply no way to fight it proactively, especially when it's perpetrated intentionally. The good news is that friendly fraud chargebacks can be fought and won, as long as you have compelling evidence that shows how the fraudster's dispute claims are false. There are ways to make account takeover fraud more difficult. You can require stronger passwords and two-factor authentication, for example. But the biggest point of vulnerability is the targeted customer, who may be persuaded to give up their login credentials with phishing attacks or social engineering. Merchants can try to educate their users on best practices for online safety, but this is no guarantee that they won't fall victim. Identity theft is even harder for merchants to guard against. You can implement stringent anti-fraud algorithms that flag even the slightest inconsistencies, but this risks turning away and alienating your actual customers. One thing that merchants can do is analyze fraud very carefully when they find out about it via chargebacks. When you realize you've been hit with clean fraud, you can study the transaction data and see if there are any hints or red flags that might have helped you detect it at that time. This can yield insights that you can use to inform your anti-fraud strategies in the future. Conclusion: there are no easy answers when it comes to clean fraud, but it's always a good idea to analyze your fraud data, review your preventative measures, and improve your practices to stop as much as the not-so-clean fraud as you can. When you're doing the best you can at avoiding preventable fraud, the occasional unavoidable act of clean fraud will be less impactful on your revenue and chargeback rate. For many merchants, the most common form of clean fraud is friendly fraud, and that's one you can do something about. Represent fraudulent chargebacks with your best evidence, and always remember to block the perpetrators from making future purchases. With the right tactics and the truth on your side, you can win back your revenue.
To learn more, visit chargebackgurus.com.